Hey ladies and germs, at first I wasn't going to actually record this, but then I started noticing some subtle differences between the RT and the SXT for 11 to 14 model years for doing the brakes. This one is slightly different only because this is single piston calipers, so let's make a video about it, how to change those out for your rotors and your brake pads. First you want to do is break your lug nuts, lift your car, remove your lug nuts, remove your wheel and tire. You'll need lubricant, brake lubricant, anti-seize. I like putting that on the wheel hub around when I put the wheel back on. 19 millimeter open end socket or wrench, and then you have a flathead screwdriver, little steel brush. That's to brush off any rust and deterioration. Some sockets, hardware, brake pads, and your rotor. Oh, and you want something to compress the caliper piston. Let's get started. Normally, it's very hard to get a wheel and tire off, but this came off pretty easily. I usually have a rubber mallet, and if I have to resort to a sledgehammer, I will, just tapping the tire while rotating it, and that'll knock it loose. And then back here, what you want to do before removing the caliper bracket bolts, you want to actually remove this 10 millimeter bolt up here, and this is to your wheel speed sensor. This will give you access to this bolt head here, where you could take that bracket off. But first, let's take off our caliper. So the caliper guide pin bolts are 13 millimeter. The guide pins itself actually have a 18 or 19 millimeter hex here that you can hold down if you're having trouble getting this bolt out. With these bolts removed, take your flathead screwdriver, kind of shimmy this open top to bottom until this can come loose enough to just grab out. Why isn't this? There we go. There we go. So now it should just pull off. Now I do recommend getting yourself one of these. It's called a caliper hook. Just you can actually use this to just hook on your upper control arm there. That way you have plenty of room to work on this without this interfering. Now if you don't have one of these hooks, you could just as easily just kind of rest this on top or unmount this speed sensor bracket like you have to anyways, and just kind of gently have it laying on the ground if it has enough distance and enough slack to do that. If you don't have enough slack to do that, I highly recommend using something similar, maybe even a coat hanger, and just kind of like hang it up out of the way. Now with the caliper bracket off, you should be able to remove the rotor just fine. If you have any trouble, when in doubt, sledgehammer it out. Just rotate it and just knock until it knocks loose and then come off. This is where I like to put a little bit of anti-seize around this area here, and little dollop here, a little dot here, a little dot here, a little dot here. This way when you put on the new rotor, and depending on how long that takes for you to change the new one out, it doesn't get kind of jammed and seized on this, where you have that situation where you're hitting it with a hammer trying to get it off. Just as an example, this is how I like to do it. Just kind of boop, 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 and circle. All right, with your caliper bracket off, just brush off any kind of contact points that you're going to have. Inspect your guide pins. Make sure that they move very easily up and down. In this case, how about this one? Oh yeah, these might need might need a little extra dollop in there. How you would go about that is just where it stops here, you kind of want to pull up extra. Boom, there you have it. There's a little bit of lubrication on there, but we want more than just that. Actually, just get a little bit on the tip. That should do it. All right, good stuff. Yeah, all right. And also, while the guide pins are lubed up, what I like to do is add a little bit of lube on the mounting points, just like so. And then obviously install your hardware on the caliper bracket. Just like so. Oh, come on. Cooperate. There we go. And put a little bit, just a tiny little bit on the inside of things. Some people are just gonna maybe comment like, Jesus, man, you're pretty liberal with the lube, man, calm down. Honestly, I find it easier to put the pads on this way with a little bit more extra, just a little bit extra. Wow, little did I know, OEM brake rotors are Bosch. So FYI, for anybody looking for OEM replacement, Bosch is the manufacturer that does the OEM brake rotors. Fun tip, this is the first time that these rotors and pads have ever been replaced on this vehicle. It's a 2012 and only like 20,000 miles. Once you have your replacement rotor on, these are from Raspestos or whatever, Raybestos, I forget the name of it. Anyways, once you have that on, then you want to put your caliper bracket back on there. Once you put your caliper mount and have it, or caliper bracket back on there, before you put in the bolts, what I like to do is put a little bit of blue across. Just make sure that this ain't backing out. I've had that happen once before, and then I put some thread locker on there and it never happened again. I don't know if it was just luck or what, but yeah. Other tip is that this rotor doesn't have any kind of mounting screw on it, like sometimes that you'll see. So put a lug nut back on it to hold it straight while you're putting your caliper, your pads, and things back on. This will help hold it straight so you can line everything up and get an expectation of how things will fit. If you see one of these hardware pieces, like sometimes you'll see like a stray little something that's too close, you just take your screwdriver and just bend, kind of add a gap, so that way once things start rolling, you don't have some weird like high-pitched screeching sound because you have just that one little piece that's scraping up against the rotor. Once you have your pads on, everything's kosher, kind of twist it around. If you hear some scraping, just kind of check some gaps. Kind of do one of these just to close the gap a little bit more between the hardware. Just close the gap. Open the gap a little bit more between the hardware and the rotor, and just make sure that there's a good amount of clearance there. There is room for kind of some self-correction as you're driving, but that's a whole lot better than the scraping that was there before. Next step, we got to compress this piston back flush, and how we're going to do that is taking an old brake pad, like so, and then you want to get a tool or a C-clamp, but in this case we have one of these basic AutoZone tools because this fits perfectly in the pocket here for this, and I can't do this one-handed. So let me see if I've demonstrated this in other videos before, so if you want to go check out those videos. Right now it's nighttime and I'm just trying to get this done, so if you want to see, I'll make maybe a short from one of my other videos and then maybe you can find that. But if you don't know, basically you have to take this, use this plate, let me bring this back down, use this plate to support underneath these claws from the caliper here, and then basically what you want to do is tighten this, and it'll be slow. You got to use a little elbow grease, but it'll slowly start pressing down, and then basically you want it to be kind of flush, so that way you can fit this over the new pads, because the pads are obviously going to be thicker than the old ones. So I mean, by comparison, they're going to be thicker, so you want to make sure that that fits, because this will compress inward or put more pressure on. As these pads start getting worn down, this piston will be more exposed out from the cylinder. So that's what we're going to do here now. Okay, as you can notice, this is pretty much flush, so now we can take this off the hook and remount this over the pads. Real quick before I forget, check where these contact points are. So you see this claw, you got two pieces here on this side of the caliper, so that's going to cover these areas, and then obviously the piston is going to cover the center part of the back pad on that back plate. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of lubrication here, just do a dollop here, do a dollop here, and then on the center on this portion, and then slip on your caliper. All right, now that everything's together and looks a lot messier than it actually looks like to my eyes because this light is shining on it, oh well, just remember to remove your caliper hook from your upper control arm or wherever you had it hanging, whether it be on a spring or what, and also remember to bolt back on your speed sensor bracket back here, with that 10 millimeter bolt. Remember to remove your placeholder lug nut here before you put your wheel back on. Oh my god, it's taking forever. There we go. Again, so that the way the wheel doesn't get like seized on the face of the brake rotor, I like to just add a little dot between the studs, put the wheel back on, make sure you torque it down to 110 pound-feet of torque, and we should be good. All right, 110 foot-pounds. We want to go ahead and tighten this. Oh god, front wheels, duh. All right, we just want to drop this just enough so that way there's grip on the driveway. Just about there. Now, we should be able to get this sucker without spinning it. One. There it is. All right, now we can let it down completely, put our things away, do the same to the other side. If you're starting from here, do the same on the other side, and you should be good for the fronts. There it is, guys. Front brakes on a 2012 SXT Dodge Charger. That's how you replace the rotors, and the pads. The reason I'm not doing the rears on this video, I will be doing the rears, but for most people changing brakes, the front brakes are most of your braking power. That's where a lot of the pressure goes. You're replacing the front brakes, like the rotors and the pads, more often than you would the rears. You would replace the rears once you start hearing some noise, some scraping, squealing, things like that. You know that there's a lot of wear on them. These ones, no squealing or squeaking or anything like that, but they are old. 2012, first time ever changing the brake pads and the rotors. Was it necessary? In my opinion, not really. My mother-in-law was talking about braking distance and how that changed pretty rapidly. And I also had to ask her the question, well, when did this happen? Because in my opinion, or not even opinion, this is a scientific fact, your braking distance is fully determined on your tires and how well the grip is to the road. So I asked her, I said, did this start happening right after you changed your tires? She said, yes, it did. So in my opinion, they didn't need to be changed. They're a use item, right? But they're only going to wear down as much as you use them. It's not like oil where, it'll just, you need to change it because it's been sitting there for 6 years or whatever when not being driven. Same thing with gasoline, right? Liquids, this is a thing. But for brakes, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But she didn't feel safe having it this old, and I totally understand that. And that's why we changed them today. And we're going to be doing the rears tomorrow, and I'll document that process as well. But I just wanted to put it out there, the fronts now, for people that might help people that want to change theirs. This is how you do it. And yes, it does differ from the RT from this year, because the RT actually is a 2-piston caliper, and then of course 4-piston Brembos for your SRT 8 models. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope this helped you, and subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. Whatever. It helps. It does. Please do. But next one, we're going to replace the rear brake rotors and pads, and then we should be squared away. Then she has this airbag recall she's got to do. So be then doing the motor mounts on the Dodge Charger Daytona that's in the street right now, but my motor mounts are bad, and I will actually go into explanation how to determine that and how to isolate that and how you know that for sure the engine mounts are bad, followed by the replacement. So stay tuned for that, and I guess I'll see you on the next one.